Our next guest says there may be another financial crisis and it may be the worst one yet. And of course, we had to ask him, what could this all mean for gold? Former Congressman and three-time presidential candidate Ron Paul joins us now. Dr. Paul, good to have you back on the program.
Thank you, Danielle. Nice to be with you.
Well, of course, we'd really like to get your thoughts on gold. But before we do, let's talk about what all the markets are focused on right now, the Fed and a potential rate hike next month. Can the Fed finally raise rates? What do you make of the landscape here, Dr. Paul?
Well, all along, I've always assumed that they probably wouldn't raise the rates, that it would become evident that the economy is weaker than they pretend. I still believe that, but they've actually, I think, convinced themselves that they've gotten the markets to work it in and assume that the rate will be increased and it will go through without ramifications. So since I place no confidence in the Fed doing anything in a smart way, who knows what they'll do. But I still think there's a lot of evidence from history to show that the Fed is in a bind and they'll get nervous, and at the last minute they'll find another excuse not to raise rates.
In anticipation of tightening in the U.S., we've seen the dollar get a boost. This has been a major factor pressuring the gold market. What do you make of the dollar strength? Is it a true reflection of the state of the U.S. economy?
I think there, of course, is a lot of manipulation. The one thing the governments can do, which they've done for a long time, and it goes back to the time I got interested in monetary policy and Austrian economics, was the manipulation of the dollar and keeping the dollar at $35 an ounce for year after decades, and they were able to do it. But finally, the market overwhelmed, and gold finally broke out. But I think they continue to do exactly that. So here we have a situation today where, the spot market, is higher than the futures market. So somebody's this is sort of strange. So yes, the dollar is up in relationship to other currencies, but if you look at the dollar long term since 1971, it's actually been pretty steadily down. So it's up right now, but I think it's temporary, and I think when the markets decide to shift, they'll say, well, no, the dollar is strong, and it's the dollar of the world, and all these kind of things. But I think the attitude can change rather quickly, and people will leave. And then, but the ultimate test for the dollar is the purchasing power of the dollar, and that's going down all the time. So,
Dr. Paul, I just want to go back to something you mentioned about gold and manipulation. Are you suggesting that there's a clear manipulation in the gold market?
Oh, I think so. You know exactly how it occurs and who says what and who sets things. But, I think, the futures markets, our government actually has the legal ability to do it in the Exchange Stabilization Fund, which they got in the 30s, that they were allowed to manipulate the price of gold, for the interest of the dollar and our economy. So they do this. But of course, they do it pretending that nobody knows what they're doing. But no, I believe they do it. But I don't think we'd have these kind of markets if you wouldn't have somebody trying to prop up the value of the dollar.
Dr. Paul, I want to ask about a recent poll that showed the U.S. is polarized in how its citizens view the health of the U.S. economy, with Democrats mostly thinking it's relatively healthy, while Republicans think otherwise. How critical is it that the country finds a common ground on agreeing on the state of the economy here?
Well, I don't know. Politically, you'll never get that. But I think if you go to the middle class, I think they agree that there's something terribly wrong. If you go to students leaving colleges and looking at the debt, because I think the thing that people look at and know there's something terribly wrong, disregarding Republicans and Democrats and all this, is the amount of debt that is existing. Whether it's our national debt, whether it's our foreign sovereign debt, it's whether the student debt, $1 trillion+ whether it's corporate debt, and this is one of the consequences of runaway printing of money, which is inflation. When you print the money and create excessive amount of money, you get distortions. Yes, you do have prices going up, and yes, we have them more so than the government reports, but still people aren't frightened that much. But doing this, the artificially managed low interest rates also does other things. All the malinvestment, the spending of in the wrong manner, but most importantly, the accumulation of debt.
Okay, well, I want to get your thoughts on the elections. How do you feel about the Republican candidates? We know your son, Senator Rand Paul, also running. Will we start to see you become more vocal?
Well, probably. I mean, I do, but it is a little bit awkward, with Rand running because obviously he far surpasses the rest of them, but that doesn't mean that he's automatically going to get the coverage that some get. Because if you're not a neoconservative and if you don't support all these wars, it's difficult to get either the liberal or the conservative stations to give you a fair coverage. Just look at the reaction of all the candidates, except for him, about what we have to do because there were some killings in France, in Paris, which was a tragedy, but the response has been way out of proportion to what normally would have happened. I mean, the fear is built, and people are saying ISIS is coming, they're going to blow up New York, and this was the same type of thing that they did to convince the American people that they had to go to war against Saddam Hussein, which I fought wholeheartly, lost that fight, and yet now they're saying that was a stupid war.
Dr.
Yet
Paul,
we're still there.
What do you think is the risk for the U.S.? How great is the risk of a terrorist attack here?
Well, I think it's significant. It's amazing that there hasn't been more. But since we've been involved in the Middle East, terrorist attacks around the world have gone up ninefold. So the number of terrorist attacks are significantly going up. So, yes, there is the danger that it will come here, but the real danger is the stupidity of our government, that if anybody would come to the logical conclusion that the more we're over there, the more we occupy, the more Muslims we kill, the more likely it is that the world will be disrupted with terrorism, the terrorism will be spreading, and now it's all through Europe, and the wars have created all the migration problems and the financial problems. So it is pretty discouraging, but your question is, will they come here? Yeah, most likely, and that is why I think the answer is so logical and so clear-cut that for our benefit, we ought to just get out of there. It hasn't.
Dr. Paul, what are your thoughts on the presence of someone like Donald Trump in the running here? Is it good for the political landscape?
Very, in a minimal way, yes, because he attacks very effectively political correctness and things that you're not allowed to say. He says them anyway, and all of a sudden we find out a lot of people like that. But he is also, being captured by this dissent and the problems we have and the hatred that's building. So yeah, he is he's able to use this issue to build up a following, but I think it's just counteracting the violence we see on the other side, because he says bomb them, kill them more, put them in prison, torture people, all that kind of stuff. But he is rallying the group, so that's why the animosities between East and West are actually building.
All right, Dr. Paul, thanks so much for joining us on the Kitco Gold Report today.